Today, we're going to dive into the fascinating history of a really powerful idea, the legal rule.
So, let me ask you something that might sound a little strange at first. What's the real difference between a proverb and a law? It seems like an odd question, but the answer is the key to understanding how our whole concept of law even came to be. When does a simple summary of how things are become a command for how things must be?
Well, to get to the bottom of this, we have to travel all the way back to ancient Rome. This entire exploration, by the way, is based on the fantastic research of Professor Kiskinov, who traces this exact journey of the legal rule right back to its origins.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at what the original Roman regula actually was. Then we'll watch it transform from just a description into a prescription. After that, we'll follow the idea's evolution through the Middle Ages. And finally, we'll see how this one ancient concept left us with two major legacies today: norms and principles. Let's get started.
So let's start at the very beginning. In classical Rome, if you said the word regula, it didn't mean what we think rule means today. It was a completely different kind of tool, more of a teacher's guide than a judge's gavel.
And here is the absolute key to this whole thing. A regula was descriptive, not prescriptive. It was a summary, a handy little maxim that jurists came up with after they looked at a whole bunch of similar cases. You should think of it less like a command and more like a convenient rule of thumb designed to help students learn the law.
You don't have to take my word for it. The great Roman jurist Paul stated it perfectly. The regula didn't create the law. The existing law created the regula. It was just a reflection of the law, not its source. And on its own, it had no binding legal force whatsoever.
When you put them side by side, the difference is just massive. A Roman regula grew out of specific real-world cases to be a teaching aid. A modern legal norm is a top-down command from the state, and it is absolutely binding. We're talking about two fundamentally different concepts here. So, how did one evolve into the other?
Well, that question brings us right to the turning point in our story. This is the Great Transformation, where this humble teaching tool began its incredible journey to becoming the foundation of modern law.
You see, for centuries, these regula were just one of many tools for organizing and teaching law. But then, in the 5th century, something really dramatic happened. A single imperial decree changed the entire game, forever.
Remember this year, 426 AD. This is the moment the very DNA of the legal rule was rewritten.
So how did it happen? Well, the writings of 5 legendary jurists were already held in super high regard. The emperors just decided to make it official. They issued a decree saying that from now on, the collected works of these men were legally binding. And since those books were packed with descriptive regulae, those little summaries were suddenly transformed, almost overnight, into prescriptive, binding laws.
Now, this new transformed idea didn't die out with the Roman Empire. No way. In fact, its journey was just beginning, as it found a new home in the world of medieval scholarship.
See, after Rome, legal scholars weren't dealing with new cases every day. Instead, they spent their time analyzing the ancient texts themselves. They were looking for abstract systems and universal truths hidden inside the writings of guys like Paul and Oppian. And as a result, the regula got a huge promotion. They were no longer seen as just simple summaries of old cases. They were elevated and started being treated as timeless, universal axioms, like the fundamental building blocks of law itself.
And that brings us to today. The long and winding journey of the regula has left us with two distinct, powerful legacies that shape legal systems all over the globe.
It's almost as if the regula split and went down 2 different evolutionary paths. The first path led to the modern legal norm, those strict binding rules you'll find in the legal codes of countries in continental Europe. The second path led to the legal principle, a much more flexible guiding concept that is absolutely fundamental to common law systems like in the UK and US, and is also vital in the law of the European Union.
And you can still hear the echoes of these ancient regulae all around us today. Think about some basic legal principles we just take for granted, like the idea that you can't sell something you don't own, or that not knowing the law isn't a valid defense. These ideas trace their lineage directly back to those Roman summaries. They're part of the deep foundation of our legal thinking.
So there it is, the complete journey. A descriptive summary, born in a Roman classroom, was transformed by an emperor's decree into a binding command. That idea then evolved through medieval scholarship into 2 distinct legacies that shape our world today: guiding principles and strict rules. Which leaves us with a final question to chew on. In the unending quest to build a just society, which is more vital? The flexible principle that forms the foundation, or the rigid rule that builds the structure?